Today, we should point out, primary voters in Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, and Washington State all heading to the polls to cast their ballots. Let's bring in Chuck Douglas, talk show host from WTOH Radio. Kimberly Atkins, not a talk show host, but she is chief Washington reporter for the Boston Herald, and then also an MSNBC contributor. And Jeremy Peters, reporter for the New York Times, MSNBC contributor, could very well host a radio show at some point in his career, I'm sure. Chuck, let's stay in Ohio, my friend. You spend a lot of time talking to folks there on your radio show. What are the issues driving them to the polls today, and why has there been such a comparatively tepid response to Balderson?
You know, I think what's driving people is not necessarily as much local as most of us, or at least many of us, would like it to be. I really do think all the speculation about this being a reflection of how people feel about Washington and Congress and the president and so forth, I really do believe that ultimately that is more of a catalyst for getting anybody to the polls that goes today than what may be going on down the street. And I agree with the report that just ran. We are going to learn a lot tonight based on how many people vote, first of all, and how they vote. I'm kind of looking forward to the polls closing and getting the info.
You're getting the sense, it sounds like there in Ohio where you are, you're getting the sense that this is going to be another election where people aren't necessarily voting for something, they're voting against a whole heck of a lot.
I think that is probably the gist of a lot of mindsets out here, and that's really been kind of the campaign on both sides, too. You know, it's the Republican platform is if you vote Democrat, you're voting for Nancy Pelosi. That has essentially been what we've heard here. And from the opposite side, if you vote for the Republican, you're voting for more of the same that you're getting with Trump right now in the current administration. So it's, you know, that's been kind of the way that people have been motivated to get involved. I just personally am hoping for a strong turnout. It bothers me to see 18 to 20% of people turn out at the polls. Even in presidential elections, 24 to 26%. That's just not acceptable. The world is the world, but the United States needs participation of its people. And when people don't get out to the polls and then complain the next day about what's going on, big frustration for me.
It has become the American way, unfortunately. Kimberly, President Trump, he's had a fair amount of success with his primary endorsements. This is not a primary that we're talking about here in Ohio, but he has had success. His choice in each of the last 9 primaries, that choice has come out on top. What about in a special election? What about in a general election like what we're seeing here in Ohio? Do we think that the president's success is going to necessarily translate?
That's hard to say. I mean, we've seen already in special elections where the president has gotten involved and come out on the losing side in several states. And I think what really we are seeing here, both Republicans and Democrats are paying close attention to, is that this particular Ohio district, while it's very hard to draw national conclusions from one race, this district has a little something for everyone to watch. It has suburban voters, which we have talked a lot about, especially suburban women just outside Columbus. Do they stay with Trump or do they peel off? You have a lot of working class folks who voted for Obama and then voted for Trump. Do they go back to the Democrats? How strong is the support for Trump in the more rural areas? Will they turn out? Will Democrats be able to turn out as well? So these are all little factors that are all going to factor in November that a lot of people are keeping an eye on just to see what the tea leaves hold.
Jeremy, what's at stake for President Trump here in the 12th Congressional? Does the closeness of the Ohio race, does it already signal perhaps a victory of sorts for Democrats?
I think if Republicans lose, Craig, you are going to see a panic shudder through the party, because this is the kind of race they should not even be fearing a loss of. So what you have going on here, I think, are 3 different dynamics. You have what was alluded to at the top of the show about the way that there are traditional, kind of wealthier, well-educated Republicans in the suburbs who might be turned off by the party of Trump and therefore will stay home. You also have the fact that there are Democrats who are going to be energized by Donald Trump's very presence there. They see him and they want to vote against him. And by going there, he only motivated them more. We saw that dynamic play out in the Pennsylvania special election a few months ago, which the Democrats ended up winning there. And then you have another factor that doesn't get quite as much attention, and that's whether or not Trump's popularity is translating to these Republican candidates. That voters who really like Trump see these kind of stale, typical central casting Republicans who don't really do it for them the way that Trump did. And I think that's what you have here in Balderson. You know, Republicans will complain that he's not the most ideal candidate, although you've heard them say that a lot more recently, which tells me that they're quite worried about this race. But Donald Trump spent his entire political career attacking the Republican Party, attacking leadership. So, you know, why should we expect then his voters to turn around and be supportive of these congressional candidates? There's just really no congressional wing, no congressional effect here of Donald Trump's popularity so far.
Michigan's primary also today, John James. He's the guy that's being supported by President Trump in this particular race in his bid for a Senate seat there. President Trump tweeting, calling him spectacular, adding, quote, "Rarely have I seen a candidate with such great potential." Is that, Kimberly, an endorsement that is likely to help John James today?
I think we'll have to see. I mean, I hate to keep saying that,
sure,
but in these primaries, this is also a key thing that we're watching tonight. Do the Trump candidates, the more Trump-supporting candidates, beat out some of the more sort of establishment Republicans who we have seen in some of these districts? And on the Democratic side, are some of the more progressive candidates who are launching challenges, are they going to beat out some of the more moderate Democrats? All of these are questions that are in play that are really important to the future of both parties, and we'll get a little glimpse of what voters have to say about it tonight.
Here's the thing, though, if he does win, Jeremy, he's going to be facing three-term incumbent Senator Debbie Stabenow, right?
He absolutely will. Funny story, Craig. I actually went to high school with John James.
Really?
I found this out. I was interviewing him on Friday for this article I was writing, this Q&A that I did with him. We discovered we were a year apart in the same high school. But I think
that's a hell of a class. New York Times reporter, Senate candidate? Wow.
Right, and the hope there, though, is that if Trump's endorsement puts him over the top in what was a pretty tight primary, or one that certainly tightened with Trump's endorsement, that he would be competitive against Stabenow. You know, as you alluded to, she's really, really tough to beat. Been there 3 terms. She won her last re-election by 20 points. Could James be the type to appeal to Michigan voters? Remember, Trump carried the state in 2016. I don't know. It's going to be awfully tough. I think, especially in the city of Detroit. I don't think Donald Trump quite has the brand name that you'd want if you were a Republican running for election in the city of Detroit. So we'll see. But I think that it's going to be tough even if he does win tonight.
Jeremy, Kimberly, and Chuck Douglas, host of WTOH Radio. What's the name of the show, Chuck, for folks who are coming through?
Believe it or not, it's called Chuck Douglas Radio, 5 to 7 Eastern, 98.9 FM, The Answer in Columbus.
And that was the voice that we were, that's that radio voice there. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.